Hey everybody, Mind Circus here with you. Hey, before we get started, if you hear some loud banging outside my apartment on this video, they're out there shoveling pretty much the first appreciable amount of snow we've had in the town that I live in the past 12 years. So that will explain some of the noise you'll probably hear across this video. Let's talk about this video here, and what we're going to talk about here is, and I'm just going to bring up a picture here. We're going to talk about clone brushing, and one of the main reasons that we're going to talk about clone brushing, and one of the reasons that I think that being good with a clone brush is one of your best assets, is because it opens up a whole new level of pictures to play with. People overstate the artistic element in avatars at points, and a lot of the times it really comes down to the pictures that you choose. And if you've got the ability to, choose pictures that you wouldn't ordinarily do, kind of a new world opens up to you. And we'll talk about this. And in order to illustrate it, this is one of my old avatars. I did this when I first came back about 6-8 months ago, I guess. It's not bad. There's a lot I like about it. I do it differently now. It's pretty simple, but sometimes that's best. Let's look at the original picture I used, and this is why people have specifically asked me, like 3 different people have specifically asked me to show me how I did this one. So here's the original picture. Now the original picture has dead horses all over the ground. I'm not one to kind of shy away from weird and creepy shit on my avatars. I'm certainly no Lucretia, but I will definitely put some weird ass shit on my avs at points. That said, I thought the dead horses were a little much even for me. I loved the rest of this though so much, I had to add it, and so I set across with the clone brush on it. So the first thing I'm actually going to touch on being good with the clone brush is that you don't have to be that good. And we're going to take a look at this. Now, people look at this, and then they go back to this, and then they go back to the first one. They're like, oh my god, how did you do that? That's so great. Well, we're going to zoom in on this, and we're going to see it's not as great as you think. Okay? If we look by his hand here, we can see some very definite marks. Okay? If we go over by the hat, we can see a pretty big mistake. Over here, there's a real line where this isn't going across. Okay? And most egregiously is this dark shadow here on the ground. Okay? Now, my point about all that is just really simple. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can get away with a lot, first of all, because you're working big and you're going to resize it. Now, these little mistakes that you see close up, if we go out, doesn't mean as much. It doesn't mean as much when we haven't looked at the original image either. And that's the really big point, is that you've got to understand that there's a very definite point where you can say, good enough. Okay? So don't push yourself too hard. It's far more important to match the color values than it actually is to match the clone brushing work itself. Okay, that's number one. Let's go over here and let's grab our clone brush, and we'll talk a little bit about a couple of the tips and tricks about using the clone brush effectively. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a medium-sized brush for this. A lot of people kind of either go with the big brush or the little brush, but typically I go at about 16 pixels with my clone brush, and you'll see why when I come in here, and I'm just going to bring it actually down to about 10-11 pixels here, okay? And we're going to zoom in on this now, and the first thing we'll do is get rid of this one far in the background. Now, when I'm picking a point to clone from, I'm making sure that it's of a similar color value, and I may go into other parts of the picture if I think that's appropriate, but over here, this one's a really simple job. Let's just grab this here and start cloning that out. I guess let's set our opacity to 100% on that brush and do it for real. Okay? And there it is. Now when we zoom out, that one was never there. Okay? Let's go to this next one over here, and we're going to do the same kind of thing, and then I'm going to show you just a little bonus action on this. Okay? So we're going to go in here, and we're going to try the same thing. And with this one, What's important to note, okay, is the area around where my target is. Now, if I pull this same brush, and you can see the outline of my brush, if I use this same brush here on this piece over on the other side, I'm going to get that dark line up there, so I'm actually going to just shrink my brush down for this part, okay? And I'm going to go down to about 9 pixels. I'm going to start about here. And as with anything, I'm going in single one-pointed clicks. Okay, I'm not trying to go ahead and make it. I'm not trying to go ahead and sweep a giant brush stroke. I'm doing it one at a time, because the moment I see that one go out of the mix, I can just hit Control Z and keep going pretty quickly. A big part of clone brushing is just kind of, zooming in on it, getting as close as you can, using a medium-sized brush, and then just 1 click, 2 click. I'd rather do it in 3 clicks than 1 click. Okay? Now, if you see there, I actually went in by 1 pixel too much and kind of cut off a little piece of his cane. Again, that's the exact reason that I'm only going in 1 step every time I do it. Now, I'll probably just go in here and use the soft edge of the brush, and there you go. It's that level of attention to detail that's going to kind of get your point across. Okay? So let's look at the next point of clone brushing, and we'll actually just go to the next cow here, or horse here. Now, this one in here is going to be tougher because there's no real area around it from which to clone from, so we're going to have to clone from a different area. Now, it's going to be pretty easy, actually, to clone it from this area here, if you see where I'm kind of moving my mouse around, and then bring it across on the other side of his hat. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is start with this kind of dark line layer. Oops, my bad. I'm going to click on the dark line layer, and don't be afraid when you're doing this to zoom out. Okay, usually I'm showing you how to get in real close to things. With this, don't be afraid to zoom out a little bit and make it look natural. Okay, so there we go. Starting to come across. Don't want to go too far. I'm just going to clone that hat on, so I'm just going to start back here again. Okay. And kind of bring that across. Alright. Now, that's part of what we needed to do. It's not the whole thing. What I'm actually going to do for this layer underneath it here, where the other part of the horse was just grab it from underneath and just kind of start filling it in instead. So the point is, don't be afraid to grab your clone sources from different areas of the image. Okay? You'll see when this comes together here. So again, I'm just grabbing those clone sources from places we wouldn't expect it. And you know what? Looks good to me, particularly at av size. I might come in here and smooth that out a little bit, and I'll talk to you about smoothing it out a little bit. Okay? Let's talk about the next part of it, and the next part of it is actually when we get to the beginning of the image, and it's in image selection. I cropped the edges of the avatar, right? So I didn't have to do the entire horses. Okay, so that is another thing to keep in mind. Now, let's go over here. Let's get rid of this one, but in this case, I may not even use the clone brush. I'm actually going to use, I guess, Photoshop users have what's called a smudge tool. This isn't a smudge tool, this is a push tool, and I'm actually going to bring this down to about 9 pixels, and I'm going to use this in scenarios where the area that I want to kind of duplicate is like in lines. And if we come in here, down here, and let me just zoom in here a little bit, you see how we've got some very definite lines coming across? So I'm just actually going to follow those lines, push brush. Okay. And then I'll just sweep them back here. Now if I lower the opacity of a push brush, I can actually make it blend in with little brush strokes. Okay, and blend out. Okay, and there we go. There's another area that's kind of gotten rid of. I probably have to come in here and play with this a fair bit more, as you can see, because really we've got this in here. But again, I'm just going to increase the opacity of that push brush and just start pushing it back and forth, right? One layer into the other. And we're not actually even using layers for this. let's go back out, and that's definitely, I can definitely live with that. And I'll just do the same down here. We'll up the opacity for the main strokes. Okay. And then we'll lower the opacity just for blending. Okay. And there we go. Now, in an area like this, the other thing I just want to keep in mind is when we zoom out, this is appreciably smoother than the area beside it. If we go and grab a sharpen brush, set it here for about the same size, and just go over this a little bit, it can create us the kind of noise that we're looking for. Set the opacity really low, and then just kind of. So there's another way we can do it. There's some other things we can do to make that happen, but just keep in mind that you don't have to be married to any of this, and it doesn't actually have to even be a clone brush. You can actually use your little push brush here. Okay. So we'll just blend that a little bit more, just for the sake of argument, and we'll go on to our last idea here. And I won't do all the horses, but we'll hit this one over here. Now this one, if we go back and look at the avatar, I kind of got it out and I kind of didn't, and I made a shadow on the ground. And really, we'll do the same thing here. We'll just grab this clone brush, and we'll get rid of most of it. And again, when we're using our clone brush, try and grab areas of a similar color value. But keep in mind that these things change when the light hits it, right? So, one step at a time. You know what? I think I'm better than I was about 8 months ago, because that doesn't need much. Here's one thing to look at when you're using the clone brush, and I'm just going to illustrate these with a little. It's this. Whoops, that's way too big. Set this for smaller, just so I can show you what I'm talking about. Is keep your eye out for areas like this and this, which is the same area cloned and quite close together. So let's take a look at that again, right? And that's the kind of thing that starts to ruin the effect. We see this similar kind of bit over here, where if we go out, we can actually see that this is most definitely cloned. The secret to avoiding that is to variate our input area. So what we'll do is we'll grab our clone brush again. I'm just going to grab a different source and paint over that spot that's duplicated. Probably going to just try the same thing over in this area here, and just try and grab it from a different source with, of course, the same light value. Okay. Okay. Now when we zoom out, that looks a whole lot more natural, and it's just got to do with the fact that we're pulling things from a different spot. Okay. Hit up this area here, and that looks a little more natural. Again, varying our spots, our selection spots, gives us that natural look that we're looking for. I'll leave it to you guys to figure out the rest. If you've got any questions, and I'm sure there will be, I'll definitely, expand on this topic going forward, but hopefully that helps.